It should not be possible for a comic book to be more anticipated for me than a Batman comic book, than a Spider-Man comic book, than a Daredevil comic book, than a X-Men comic book. The built-in advantage that Marvel and DC, with their legendary characters who have been around for upwards of 80 years, in some cases 60 years in most cases, with cartoons and movies and video games, just having decades and decades and decades of stories and loyalty and video games and action figures and all kinds of things. It shouldn't be possible for comics to have where those characters, with all the built-in goodwill, are literally the comic book universes that seem to have the least amount of excitement in them compared to indie titles. It is crazy to me that an old sword and sandals character like Conan, who I love, but is nowhere close to Batman in terms of my all-time loyalty towards the character, has such a better comic than Batman. It shouldn't be possible that Geiger and Redcoat, two characters I hadn't even heard of 3 or 4 years ago, have a better comic book than the Avengers. It shouldn't be possible that Flash Gordon, a character who's probably too old for even my dad to like, has a better comic book that I enjoy monthly than The Incredible Hulk. It's crazy how this has happened to comic books. But the weirdest thing is, indie books, and not the old school indie books of all brand new characters. Geiger and Redcoat are doing that, but indie books from Titan, from Ghost Machine, from Image, from Mad Cave Comics are somehow putting together better lineups, better creatives, better stories, and better put together books from a quality standpoint than Marvel or DC. And it's insane in that I think there's really only two things that are causing that. And I think it shows the huge difference between why indies are excelling and when Marvel and DC, while not all bad, and I'm not here to just dunk on them and say that they suck, but I think if Marvel and DC could just adapt a little bit of what these companies are doing, they could put themselves right back at the top and be winning over sales. But they just don't want to seem to do it. And so when I look at books that I read, when I look at Geiger, when I look at Redcoat, when I look at Conan, when I look at Savage Sword of Conan, when I look at Flash Gordon, and I'll say even I think Mad Cave's had some interesting things pop up with the Phantom. There's an upcoming book there. The Zero issue is really good on that. It's a pretty good launch of what was it, Speed Racer this week as well. I think it's just really interesting to kind of see what they're doing that works. And so I think first and foremost, and I'll even throw another one in. Dynamite Comics with Space Ghost is another one that's doing well. And so I think there's two things why indies are dominating what Marvel and DC have to do to get back on this. First and foremost, the biggest differentiator between indie books and mainline comic books, the people writing the indie comic books love the character they're writing. They're not there to change the character. They're not there to break the character. They're not there to modernize the character for a new audience. They are not doing anything other than going, you know what? I love this character. I'm going to write great stories that celebrate that character. Period. You look at Titan Comics and what they did with Solomon Kane this year. You look at what they've done for the past 3 years with Conan in 2 different books that are routinely the best that come out. And what's so amazing, whether it's Patrick Zurcher on both Conan and Solomon Kane, Jim Zub, who's been fantastic on Conan for multiple years, Rob Delatorre, who's done great art, Doug Brathwaite, who's done great art. You've got Dagnino, who's doing great art on the book. You've had so many creatives come in and do such great work on Conan. And the whole reason it's great is they are not there. And they are not there to change Conan. And more importantly, they're not ashamed to write a Conan comic book. When they write the book, they look at Conan and go, this is a great character. This is a great character. Jim Zub has said this multiple times in interviews that he's done, where he said, Conan's the greatest sword and sandals fantasy character of all time. He doesn't put a caveat on it. He doesn't go, well, some of his attitudes we need to... No, he doesn't do anything with that. He doesn't try to address the problematic history of some story from 100 years ago. No, he loves Conan. He loves the universe. He loves the character. And that's why those are great. He writes stories that feel like they fit with what everything a Conan fan would want. The same thing is true with Jeremy Adams, like writing Flash Gordon. When Jeremy Adams' Flash Gordon comic book, it's all about how great Flash Gordon is, fun adventures, sci-fi adventures, escapism. It is about unabashedly celebrating the character of Flash Gordon, and if you're a fan of that character, you get to see him be as he should be. Right? I think you can say the same thing even for newer characters like Geiger and Redcoat with the Ghost Machine universe. Jeff Johns writing both of those, Brian Hitch, Gary Frank, and some of the other folks who are involved in those. They are writing stories where it is about Geiger. They're not worried about setting up the Geiger universe that features mini Geiger and this guy. No, Geiger's the main character. And yeah, there's a universe built around it, the Ghost Machine universe that they have, or the Unnamed. But if you read Geiger's comic book, guess what you get every month? Geiger. Guess what the story's about? Him. Guess who gets to get the hero moments? He does. They're not interested in like, let's deconstruct the character after 6 issues and show you why he really sucks. They're not interested in like, hey, let's break this down and talk geopolitics. And no, it's a fun, escapist, dystopian future comic book. The same is true of Redcoat, a comic book that produces an unabashed scoundrel of a character, but it is from his narrative. And if you like that character, every month he's the main character, the main focus. It's about him, it's about his development. It doesn't apologize for existing. It's not there to tell you, well, this character is actually really crappy and you shouldn't like him. And here's Junior Redcoat that you should be reading instead. No. It's a book it's just about, hey, you like this character. Here's an adventure with the character. It's that freaking simple. And when you look at what they do with all of these other books, be it Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, all of it, and I think DC is getting better at some of this. But DC and Marvel, to me, it seems like the biggest differentiator between them and what these great indies are doing is the indie comics love writing the characters, and the other guys seem like they are constantly apologizing for writing a character. It seems like they are constantly like, we don't want to have Batman look too cool in the Batman comic book because that might not look the best because, we really need to grapple with Bruce Wayne's a one percenter and should he really? No, just write a freaking Batman story where he kicks butt. Instead, they won't do that. It's, well, we need to talk about socio-political issues and deal with whether the Batman should be doing this or not. No one cares about that. We're reading Batman to see a great Batman adventure that could stand along with the great stories of the past from the Neil Adams era of comics and Frank Miller's era of comics. We're not interested in breaking down Bruce Wayne as a character and deconstructing what would this mean in the real world. We don't care. If we wanted the real world, we'll turn on the freaking news. But they don't seem to get that. It's the same thing with characters like Spider-Man, where they're just obsessed with how much can we break? How much can we break? How much can we take away? How much can we ruin the character? That's all they seem to want to do. How much can we torture them? Being tortured and losing is not a character arc. But that's all they seem to want to do to Spider-Man. And again, I'll say Joe Kelly wrote a great issue in the last issue of Spider-Man. But that's the huge difference between the two that I think stands out overall, is they seem to, on the indie side, Geiger, Redcoat, Conan, Flash Gordon, Space Ghost, Dick Tracy, all of these comics from characters who should not have passionate followings, really, and that they're about a generation too old, or they're just too new to really have where they should be overly loyal compared to the loyalty that folks should have for Spider-Man and Hulk and Batman and Superman and Spider-Man, all of them. Instead, they write the books like those are the legends. And the people writing the legends seem like they're embarrassed that those characters are the legends. And if you just get back to hiring writers or taking the ones you have and going, you know what? We don't need to break Batman here. Just write a freaking story where Batman is awesome and takes down a villain and fans will love it. I think if they can adapt a little bit of that mentality, it will really, really help turn it around. Secondly, and this is another huge issue that is happening for both, consistency. One of the things about indie books, and what's crazy to me about this is if you look at a book like Redcoat, every single issue, written by Jeff Johns, drawn by Brian Hitch. We're not talking 6 issues. This is, I believe it's 14 issues in already on Redcoat for that. Geiger, I think, is 16 issues in. Gary Frank has done all but 3 issues of that. 13 of 16 issues. I don't know any other comic book right now with the premier talent on it that they would do 13 of 16 issues. Ultimate Spider-Man is, I think, 19 issues in. I think Marco Cicchetto's done maybe 8 or 9 of those, and Messina has been the artist on the other half of them. When you look at a book like Conan, they always hire the artist to finish the arc. Right, so Rob Delatorre, 4 issues. Doug Brathwaite, 4 issues. Rob Delatorre, 4 issues. Doug Brathwaite, 4 issues. And yeah, they've had a couple other artists who come in. I think Dinick O'Brien did 2 issues, but it was a complete story finished in 2 issues. Dagnino has come in. He's writing. He's doing the current art on it. He's going to finish the arc. The thing that they get with those is, hey, if you pick up a trade of this, or if you're reading this specific story, it should look consistent from page 1 to page 150 or whatever it's going to be. You should finish that book, and whatever story we were telling that point in time that you were reading, it looked consistent across the board. They can't do this even with the big books in the big two. Absolute Batman. It's probably the #1 selling title right now. I think it's even selling the main Batman title. You've had Dragota's done some great work on it. It's 10 issues in. Dragota, I believe, has missed 4 issues. 6 of 10 have had Nick Dragota. The other 4 have not. And again, if Nick Dragota can't do 10 issues in a row, slow down then. Release it every other month. But I think it's been Walter Hernandez did an issue, and I liked his art. Or I think I'm trying to remember the name. He used to do the Vision comic book. I liked him. I know some folks don't. I love that artist personally. It was a good issue, but again, didn't look like Nick Dragota's art. I think it was Marcos Martin did a couple issues for Mr. Freeze. Again, interesting art, not bad art. But again, the selling point is, hey, it's Nick Dragota. That should be it. And again, Redcoat will give you that. Geiger will give you that. Space Ghost, I think, did that for 12 issues, where they gave you that. I think it was Jonathan Lau on the art. But Marvel and DC, supposedly the big guys, supposedly the big guns, the big two, can't even give you an arc. 6 issues. Nope, can't do it. And this is why, in my opinion, indie books are absolutely kicking the crap out of Marvel and DC from a fan satisfaction standpoint. Because you have people who love the characters they're writing, want to celebrate the characters they're writing, and want to give the fans who love those characters stories they want. Compared to the big two, where it's people going, well, I guess I'm writing Spider-Man, but I don't really like Spider-Man, but I'll write it because it's a big title. And how do I change him? And how do I morph him? And how do I move him around? And well, the fans want this. I'm not gonna. It's ridiculous. When you look at Conan, right? And I just contrast Conan and Spider-Man, right? And people can tell me that they don't miss the Mary Jane marriage and all that. The #1 thing that would make Spider-Man fans happy, that would almost double the sales of the Amazing Spider-Man, I would think, overnight. If tomorrow Marvel would announce, we're done with the MJ as Venom thing, we're done with the Peter being single, we're getting Mary Jane and Peter back together, and they're getting married. I am betting if that happened in the main continuity, you would see sales on that book increase probably 100,000 copies a month. Look at what Ultimate Spider-Man did. And largely, the change was that. But Marvel is like, no, we're not doing that. It would be the equivalent if on Conan, Jim Zub was like, he's not going to be violent anymore. He's just not going to use a sword. Conan's going to be a peaceful character now. He's not going to go on adventures anymore. It's going to be a geopolitics comic book about Conan ruling and him dealing with economic issues. And fans going, no, have him fight, have him do, no, I don't want to do that. It'd be stupid. And he'd never do that because he knows what makes Conan successful. And yet Marvel, with all the resources, all the money, all the stuff, won't do it. If you look at X-Men, you could fix the book tomorrow. You could fix X-Men. Give a book that has Cyclops, Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Rogue, Gambit, Jean. Throw them in a book. Put them in the classic costumes and have them go fight the Brotherhood of Evil in the main line on Uncanny X-Men. I am betting that would increase the sales probably 2x from where they won't do it. They're determined. No, we're going to introduce 5KLX4, whatever the heck the freaking evil mutant group is that they're fighting, 3XK or something, with 6 new mutants you're going to meet, and half the page count's going to be to more new mutant characters. And there's 6 X-Men teams, and we can't have Cyclops in this. It's stupid. And they won't give you what you want as fans. And that's what indies are doing. And the big two is not. It's not that complicated. And this is the most frustrating thing as a comic book fan, is to watch Marvel and DC take these great characters and just somehow always find like the path that fans would not want and somehow think like that's the answer. It's insane, and it's why indies are winning. It's nothing that Marvel and DC can't do. It's literally that they won't do it. And I think the other part, if you have to kind of put a cap on it as well, the crazy thing about this, the indie books cost less. Conan's a better put together book. It's got three staples, better covers, thicker paper, guaranteed artist consistency. It is, if you pick up a Titan Comics book and compare it to a Marvel Comics book, Marvel's comic book seems cheap. Seems cheap. The covers can sometimes be paper thin. The pages almost tear when you turn them. It's ridiculous. You pick up a Titan one, thicker paper, better print, more staples on the cover. It's more solidly built. Oh, and it's cheaper, by the way, than it is for DC. Ghost Machine, cardstock cover, every issue, still $3.99. And you get consistency. It's insane to me that we cannot get Marvel and DC to compete with these folks from that thing. And if they started doing this, I think they'd destroy the indie books. But they won't do it. It's just crazy. I don't know why they won't. But I was just thinking about that the other day. I've just been, why are indies so much better? And there can be all these talk about it's this and it's politics and it's this. No, I think it's really just those two things. The people writing the indie books love the characters they're writing, and I think Marvel and DC, I think most writers are kind of ashamed of the character they're writing. And I think secondly, you got to get some consistency. I think it's that simple. But let me know. What do you guys think down below? Do you think I'm simplifying it too much? Do you think it's a larger issue, or do you disagree completely? If you think the big two are still doing better than indies, I'd be interested in your thoughts. Never pretend to be the expert on it. Just one guy spouting opinions today. As always, folks, thank you for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.